I mean, if you've been as active in gay philanthropy as I have over the decades, you certainly know all about GMHC and the Center and Lambda and HRC and ESPA and SAGE, and I'm sure I left some very important GLAD and stuff out. But you don't know about Black women of Queens. So this becomes a vehicle for supporting that.
The thing about Stonewall that stands out for me the most is that it's about community, and it's about bringing like-minded people together to solve problems.
Stonewall's work is so vast and varied, and yet it touches so many different layers on a personal level.
Because the work that Stonewall does is just so incredible. Nobody else is doing this. And nobody else targets their grants to the way they do.
If we can nurture those interests and help gays and lesbians form community-based organizations, I think we'll be a stronger community on the whole.
That's another strength that Stonewall has, is they know the lay of the land, and they can really select organizations that they can see the potential for them in 3 years to really improve what they're doing and be more effective.
Just makes it very tangible, to meet these people from a completely different world than myself, but nevertheless a part of the same overall community as myself, and to see and hear about how important the grants are to them. It's incredible.
It can ensure the survival of the organization. It allows the organization to expand. Some of our grants have been used to develop a fundraising mechanism at the organization so that the organization kind of becomes self-sustaining.
And I also think one of the things that I really like about Stonewall also is that we reach those organizations that I didn't even know existed, from dance troupes to lesbian battered women's shelters. There's all sorts of organizations in the New York City area that aren't being serviced and aren't getting money and don't have the access that the larger ones do.
If we are willing to take the leap of faith that this organization and the work that they're doing is important and valuable or critical, then often our peer funders will follow us.
I guess we're now able to deal a little bit better with proactively helping the community rather than responding to crises. I think that's probably the best way I would put it.
I mean, Lori was a walking Stonewall billboard. She was so passionate about her work with the foundation that after knowing Lori for 5 minutes, you knew about Stonewall.
Oh yeah, she was something else. She was something else. She was a force to be reckoned with, because she's one of those people that are larger than life in their personality and their goodwill, and smart, like one of the smartest people I've ever met. All that, and as I said, she's a little crazy.
Basically, I was the first person many of the people who needed GMHC services met. And I can tell you that I did that, and that had to be the most moving, life-changing experience I ever had. Many of the people I met, and this is really quite frightening and sounds so out of context now, I was the first person they were telling they were gay.
I try to find the positive in things, and at least for those of us who are survivors from that period, the good news, I suppose, is that it caused all of us to perhaps seek more purpose in our life.
We've been connected to Stonewall since
the dawn of time.
The dawn of time.
So when an opportunity comes along like Stonewall to be part of something that's intended to help others have some access to the same level of opportunity, it just seems wrong not to become involved. And that's, and this is a gift.
Michael's always saying to me, we have to leave our estate to charity. We have to leave our estate to charity instead of our nieces and nephews who probably won't need it. And I do think that was sort of a whole new concept, right? Give your money when you die back to the community. I mean, I don't think people really thought of that before
there really
Stonewall.
wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't. I mean, also, before Stonewall, Stonewall was formed in the early '90s, late '80s. Before that time, there wasn't that much of a community to leave it to.
What Stonewall Quarter Share, in essence, is becoming is almost like we are producing tomorrow's gay philanthropists, and in that sense, we are producing Stonewall's future donors.
I mean, I will go out with them and sit there and we'll be having drinks after drink after drink, and I will, at some point in the evening, I will just say, I can't believe you guys just spent all this money and I'm asking you for $25 a month. That's all. That's all I'm asking for.
If we don't think about intentional and strategic ways to support the LGBT community, then we've already sort of doomed it to some degree of failure.
But there are a lot of needs that are still unmet, particularly in, underserved communities. It has the opportunity now, and I think the promise of becoming more broad-based.
To be able to have an organization like Generation Q that you can drop in and get away from that and escape.
One of the programs, for example, which is really fun that we all got a kick out was Sex on Sundays, and so they actually talk about issues of sexuality, safety, etc., while having Sundays.
They knew kids needed something in the borough after a young gay man named Steen Fenrich was murdered by his stepfather after he came out to him as gay. Like the very people who are supposed to be protecting LGBT youth more than anyone else, like parents, these kids' parents are sometimes the people who are murdering them. Brecht said that there's two ways to change the world, and one is through art and the other is through children. In general, the cool thing about Generation Q, kids come in and they very seldom leave alone, and they very seldom don't come back.
I think it is a crisis when you have, a 14-year-old who doesn't have any family support, doesn't have any education, and is trying to fend for themselves. I mean, there are so many things that can go wrong for that young person. There's no safety net for those young people. And I think it is really shocking, that this is a place of, a wonderful city with, tremendous wealth and tremendously successful people, but every night there are thousands of young people who don't have anywhere to go.
It was only until I really educated and learned more about the LGBTQ young people and the plight or issues they face that I feel I've found truly our nation's most disconnected young people.
I think that's one of the double-edged sword of as we get more and more mainstream, these people forget that the fight isn't over. Stonewall means community. It really means community.
So if they get a grant from Stonewall, it's a credential that helps them raise money elsewhere. So, I mean, I know that we're impactful, and what we do is meaningful, for those organizations that we can reach.
You can tell when the wind's at your back, when the tide is sort of picked up and it's ready to go. You just need to make sure you're ready to capture that moment, and I believe that Stonewall is, and I believe that our community is.
And that's the beauty of community foundations. So we can target our resources, we can engage people in a very intimate way in helping us achieve our goals.
I think Stonewall is in a complete upward trajectory in every way.
One of the great things that has emerged, I think, in the gay community over the last 20 years is just this whole notion of philanthropy, and that it's our responsibility within our community to give back, to support the community.
So I think, what I hope for over the next 10 years is a continuation of all the engines I see in operation right now continuing to grow, each of those different efforts and organizations taking it to the next level in their own way, and continuing the force and the momentum we have now.
I'll never forget sitting with Bill one time outside of a party, and I told him that I had given some money. It was a small amount of money. And he looked at me and he said, "Doesn't it feel really good?" And I just got goosebumps, and I said, "Yes, it does. It really does feel good." So, and I'll never forget that.